Hello again, I am Blunty. So, PlayStation has shown off the new controller. We had a spate of blog posts and videos and, Twitter posts and probably Facebook posts. I don't use Facebook, but they're probably all over the place there as well. Probably Instagram as well. Don't use that either. That everyone's sort of splurging about it. But there is one thing that Sony talked about in their blog post about the new controller that is dumber than all belief. And I can't believe anybody is actually excited about this. So let's start breaking it down. But before we do that, it's my duty as a YouTuber at this point to remind you that if you want to be notified of these videos, you'll have to click subscribe and click the bell. If you click the thumb, it helps me out a little bit in sort of getting the algorithm to go, oh, people noticed this video. They're actually engaging with the video. Comments too. Oh, engagement. Give me that engagement. Tasty, tasty engagement. Can't get enough of it. And if you're a regular around here, you can go above and beyond on a new Patreon I launched less than a month ago. All the links in the down below area for that. So let's have a chat about this controller. They're calling it the DualSense because they've got a whole bunch of sensory changes to the controller. There's actually not that much new in this announcement. Everyone seems really excited about it and they're talking about all these features, but we already knew about these features and have done for quite some time. Did you forget? Are you just looking for an excuse to get hyped about it? Because there's very little that they talked about in their new blog article that is actually new as far as feature set goes. What is new, though, is the physical look of it, and I quite like it because, quite frankly, I never really liked the PlayStation controllers of any generation. They've always felt too small and the wrong shape, and I hate, well, not hate, but I don't like the symmetrical thumbsticks as much as I do the asymmetrical version that we get in basically everyone else's controller. And this is for one simple reason. When you hold a controller, the resting position of your thumbs, the natural resting position of your thumbs, on the Xbox, it goes on the thumbstick and the buttons. The bits are used the most. On the PlayStation, that extra, I mean, it's a small thing, but that does require, a set of extra muscles in the thumb there to move it, and it doesn't feel as natural as my thumb sitting in its natural resting position in a neutral position on the thumbstick. Don't know about you, but that's always bothered me, which is why I prefer the asymmetrical thumbsticks of the Xbox and the Nintendo and almost everyone else out there in the whole universe, because they get it and Sony don't. When I went digging for this, by the way, this is my original launch day PlayStation 4 controller, and it reminded me just how bad Sony can be at controllers sometimes. Remember the original ones, how within a year the rubber that they used on their thumb pads would start to deteriorate and flake off and get sticky and gross and awful. Yeah, I remembered about that when I dug this out of my box of retired controllers, and ew. Hopefully they've learned their lesson about that. All that said, I do really like the new design because Sony's new design is quite a lot like Xbox's design. They've fattened it up. It looks wider. The angle of the sort of palm grips looks a bit more spread out. And aside from the symmetrical sticks, which I've talked about before, it looks like it's going to be a significantly more comfortable controller than this. So I'm actually pretty excited to get hands-on with the new DualSense controller. Not terribly excited about its feature set that they've been talking about. I mean, the change in haptics, sure, not new. We've known about that for a little while, and it's not even new technology. I mean, you've got the HD rumble in the Switch. We've had that for, 2.5 years now. If you've ever used any kind of VR, pretty much every different kind of VR controller, especially the ones from HTC. The HTC Vive ones do this really well, but they've got a very sort of fine-grained tactile haptic feedback thing in it, and it seems like this is going to be the same because they're getting rid of the rumble motors and they're replacing them with voice coils. And this is, again, something we've known for quite some time. So it should be a more interesting, more finer-grained, more delicate sort of sense of haptic feedback. They've also done something with the triggers. I forget what they called them. Let's see here. What was it? Adaptive triggers is what they call them. We don't really understand what exactly that means so far. Is it some sort of literal force feedback, or is it a different kind of haptic feedback? I don't know. But again, if you've ever used sort of the bow and arrow demo, Steam demo game with the HTC Vive, for example, you'll know what that kind of haptic feedback can do. When you draw a string back, you can feel, the sensation. It doesn't feel like you're pulling against the string, but the haptic feedback makes it feel like the string is getting tighter. It gives you that sort of sense, that little clue in your brain that gives you a sense of what's going on, and that's kind of exciting. But out of all the things that they talked about in this blog post, There is one above all else that is dumber than I could have ever imagined. And this alleged dumbest thing ever, stupid idea is they put a mic on it. In the blog post, they call it a microphone array. That seems like a lie because there is one microphone on it. You can see it. We've got product shots of all the angles, and there is one hole in the bottom of the microphone, or in the bottom of the controller for a microphone. A microphone array consists of multiple microphones. That's literally what the word means. Like Apple, for example, when you're using the video function of this, they use a microphone array because there are multiple microphones in this thing, and they use them in an array to get you the best possible audio quality depending on which camera you're using. And are you using the telephoto? Are you using the wide angle? Are you using the front-facing camera? They change how they use the array based on how they expect you to want the sound, where you want the sound to be coming from. Is it likely to be a voice? Is it needing to pick up a voice from further away if using telephone? All that kind of stuff. Clever stuff can be done with microphone arrays. I don't know where they're hiding the extra microphones in this controller because there's right there. It's just the one I can find. The other issue with that is, and they say this themselves in their blog post. Let's find the quote. Here it is. DualSense also has a built-in microphone array, don't think it does, which will enable players to easily chat with friends without a headset, ideal for jumping into a quick conversation. But, of course, if you are planning to chat for longer periods, it's good to have that headset handy. Now, they say that for a couple of reasons. Number one, they want to sell you licensed headsets. Of course they do. They're Sony. Number two, well, let me switch to a game, and I'll see if I can demonstrate to you what a catastrophically bad idea having a microphone on a controller is. It seems to me like it should be obvious, but just in case it's not obvious, in case there's a Sony engineer watching who thought this up and didn't try it out first, this is why it's a stupid idea. Okay, so we've booted up a multiplayer game, a game that does actually have built-in voice chat available on it. Of course, we're not using a headset, so we've got the regular speakers going, which is never a good idea when you're using a microphone in the first place. My controller is in my lap, where it normally sits, and you are listening to me on a microphone that is placed onto the controller. And I haven't cheated here. This is a good quality microphone. This is a mod mic microphone. They're well known for being good quality microphones, but with action here, and I'm calling out to my teammates, trying to describe what I'm doing, and oh, I mistimed that. Sorry, I'm trying to play off the preview window of my recording software because that's how I'm doing this day. There we go, got that time. But as you can hear, not only does the microphone sound terrible, but I'm tapping on the buttons and controls on the microphone. If you've got a microphone attached, whoop, that was close. You've got a microphone, where'd it go? If you've got a microphone attached to the thing you're handling, it's a stupid idea. And anybody who's ever used onboard microphones for a regular camera, for example, you'll know the handling noise can be tragically bad. And it's only about 1 billion times worse on an actual controller, because on the controller, you're not just handling the camera. You're not just moving, the focus ring on the lens or making adjustment to the aperture or something. You're actually physically, whoa, that was a bit of lag there. What happened? You're actually physically tapping on the controller. You're moving the sticks around. Your hands are moving all around it constantly, and it is just a living nightmare. So to use this as chat, even as a temporary chat, even as a singular kind of no. Sorry, I can't do that anymore. So not only is having a microphone in the controller the wrong position for it, both from your face and because of the handling noise, and when people are going to use it, because people don't know, most people don't understand how to use microphones, and you see this all the time. You see this in the street. People using their phone like this, talking to the edge of it like that, or holding the little dangly microphone from their wired headset. They'll hold it right up to their mouth. You hear it all the time. People don't understand that these microphones are designed and engineered to pick up your voice, so they put it way too close to the face. Even with headsets, you've heard the huffing and puffing. People don't know how to just put their headset on right. And it's going to be worse with this, because people out there are going to be doing this when they go to talk to their friends. They're going to go, oh, tappity, tappity, tap, play, play, play. And they go, hey, Frankie, why don't you come around the back? There's enemies around the side. And it's going to sound horrible. It's just the dumbest possible. Just going back to the regular thing here. Just out of respect for your own ears, this is a really stupid idea. Really, really, really stupid idea, and it's going to annoy a lot of people. Here's another thing. Remember when Xbox were launching their console, this generation, and it was going to, need this. It was going to come packed in with this, and everybody was freaking out because it had an always listening microphone on it. Or Microsoft want to put a microphone in your house. They want to listen to everything you say. They want to spy on you. Well, these days, people have been trained so well. Everyone's got an Alexa or a Google, whatever Google call their home device things, or they've got these always-on microphones in their houses anyway because it's so convenient, and nobody's freaking out about the corporations listening to them all the time. If you're paying attention, by the way, have a little Google about how many security issues there have been with smart devices and their microphones and/or cameras on them. But people have been trained to accept them these days because they're just so convenient. Hey, Alexa, play some shitty Britney Spears music. I really hope that triggered someone's Alexa. To be fair, there are some Britney Spears tracks which I quite enjoy. But everyone I've seen talking about the microphone, not only do they not mention or aren't cognizantly aware of just what a terrible idea it is to put a microphone in a device you are constantly handling and tapping on and moving parts around on. Ridiculous. And there are mitigations for this. And there are mitigations for sort of cancelling out the noise from your TV speakers and things like that. They can do something to help that. But best case scenario, that helps a little bit and makes this voice sound much, much worse. And you've got to remember that unlike my demonstration here where I've used a wired microphone, it is a wireless connection, a teeny tiny microphone, like a laptop style microphone. And a lot of you have been hearing those these days in your voice call meetings and your work from home business. And you've heard people use their onboard laptop microphones while they're typing on the keyboard. Same kind of thing, except worse. But add to all of that the fact it's a teeny tiny microphone in a controller, constant handling, and it's wireless, which means it'll have limited bandwidth because it's got to send all the other control signals back and forth for every single button press and, the lights and the condition. And still got a speaker on there and a speaker right next to the microphone. That's a terrible idea as well. But again, there are some mitigations you can do to help sort of cancel out that potential feedback loop there. But I can't imagine they're going to dedicate a lot of bandwidth to that microphone, so it's going to sound terrible. There are very few wireless microphones outside of the professional sphere of actual broadcast wireless microphones that sound good. The one that I use for gaming purposes, for this kind of stuff, is the Mod Mic Wireless. It has a custom, bespoke, little dongle thing, and it uses its own wireless bandwidth. It doesn't try to do it over Bluetooth. It doesn't try to share it with anything else. And it sounds great. Even the best wireless gaming headsets out there, and I've got dozens of videos showing these off, even they, with only one or two exceptions, sound terrible compared to a properly wired headset. Like, you just have to look at the comparison I did between the Astro A50s, their premium headset. The microphone on that is catastrophically bad. Their A10s, their piddly little lowest level cheap-ass wired headset sounds a billion times better because the microphone doesn't have to squirt itself across the wireless and share all that bandwidth with everything else coming back and forth from the headset. And a controller as sophisticated as the PlayStation one only makes that issue worse. So, heavily compressed audio, teeny tiny microphone on a device you are constantly handling, people aren't going to use it right, and anybody who's ever played a multiplayer game will know there's always some shithead leaving their microphone open so you can hear their shitty music in the background, or their parents screaming at each other, or their brother and sister screaming across the yard, or, a lawnmower going in the background, or whatever it is. Having a microphone on every single controller is only going to make that situation even worse. But let's give Sony the benefit of the doubt. Sony are moderately evil quite a lot of the time, but they're not idiots. They do know how to design technology. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they've put a decent quality microphone in there. Perhaps they've given it a bespoke section of the bandwidth and they haven't compressed it too much. And they've really taken the time to get this as good as it possibly can. They've done whatever they can to mitigate the handling noise. It's in its own little suspension mount inside there or something ridiculous. They've taken every precaution to make this microphone sound as good as it possibly can be, and they've put in off by default privacy controls, and you have to click through 7 different checkboxes just to turn the thing on in the first place to mitigate your privacy issues. Maybe even there's a bright red light that comes on whenever the microphone is actually on, so you know when they're listening to you. Best case scenario, it is actually a good idea. It's a terrible idea, but it's also a good idea because it's one of those things that it's about base level functionality. And we've seen this with all kinds of sort of, well, Kinect, for example. That the idea of selling that as, with every single Xbox was base level functionality. Everybody was going to have one of these, so every developer out there could rely on the functionality that this delivered. Those plans changed, so developers eventually kind of abandoned the idea very quickly, actually. And the PlayStation 4 controller is an example of this as well. This had that little speaker in there, and a lot of developers made use of that. Very few of them made use of it for anything particularly useful or interesting or exciting, but some of them did make use of it for interesting concepts in their game. And the only reason they could do that is because it's on every single controller. If it was an option, they wouldn't have bothered with it because they couldn't rely on enough of the people out there to have that. That's why a microphone in the controller is a good thing, because now every developer making a product, software product, game, whatever, for the PlayStation can rely on every single user having at least a base level microphone. That's interesting. For comparison's sake, remember when the 3DS, and then there was the new 3DS that had that little nub, that extra analog stick, the little thumb nub. I forget what they actually called it. But there was like 3 or 4 games ever made for it. It was a much more powerful machine. It had an extra analog input, so you could have dual analog sticks on your little handheld device. But nobody used it. You know why? Because that unit didn't sell enough. It wasn't a base level function. You got to target the lowest common denominator if you're a developer hoping to make any kind of mass market success. So, how do you guys feel about having a microphone in your controller? Are you excited for the fact, because you don't have to have a headset just to say hi to your mates anymore or tell someone to shut the F up when they've got an open mic in chat? You've got an instant way to tell them to shut up. Are you worried about privacy concerns? Are you horrified at the thought of all the terrible noise that's going to be drilled into your own head by other people not using this thing right, or having way too much external noise, or the handling noise of other people when they're trying to speak to you, or the inevitably tinny, ear-piercing, awful sound of this thing? Or are you excited by the possibilities that it might open up for developers? I will remind you at this point that the 3DS had a microphone by default, and some developers took advantage of that. Mostly in the form of making people scream at the 3DS or blow into the microphone to make things happen in stupid little mini games. Is it going to be any different for this? I don't know. I have my doubts. We shall see. At least I'm excited about it looking a lot more ergonomic, where did I put it, than this. Like, this is my least favorite of the current controllers. I don't hate it. Like, I've happily sat down for many, 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 many hours with God of War and Spider-Man and, the various PlayStation exclusives. But I do like this a lot more. And that brings this closer to this. So it might be a much more pleasant medium spot. I'll still have to deal with the agonizing first world problem of moving my thumb slightly out of its natural resting position. Oh my God, how am I going to deal? But yeah, by and large, I'm encouraged by the controller. That microphone, though, it's going to be a disaster, I think. Thank you for watching. I am Blunty. Thank you especially to the patrons, scrolling up above my head surely but at this point in the video. And yeah, just Sony. It's always something.